Joining us now, as she usually does, is former ACT MP, former City Councillor, former Regional Councillor, lawyer and businesswoman Hilary Calvert on the issues of the week. Hilary, welcome to the show. Good to see you again. Literally.
Hi, Michael.
How are you? Hey, listen, just on the Cook Islands there, I've just read out that particular agreement, which I'm sure none of New Zealand knows exists, signed in 2001. Which essentially says that the Cook Islands are an independent country, they can do what they like. What's the fuss about?
I think what Winston Peters is doing is treating that agreement as if it's like with the Minister of the Crown in New Zealand, a no surprises policy. I think he was saying when there was talk about passports and things, as to whether they could have a Cook Islands passport and a New Zealand passport. He said they, of course, can do what they want, or words to that effect. You know, they've got their own choices and they are an independent country. But if they choose to create their own passport, then we will not give them one of ours as well. So he was acknowledging that they could do what they wanted, but I think he's saying the no surprises policy, and that's how he's interpreting it by the sound of things, says you should tell us that you're doing that, not just go off on your own and do things that we don't know what you're doing about.
Except I'm also seeing here that it says under Clause 6, each signatory recognises the right of the other in accordance with its national interest to establish diplomatic relations with third parties. I would assume this is what Prime Minister Mark Brown from the Cook Islands is doing on his state visit to China, yeah?
Yes, but I don't think Winston's saying he's not entitled to establish whatever he wants or do whatever he wants. Sort of a wee bit like, is Parliament sovereign in New Zealand? Yes, it is. Well, some of us think it is. Winston is acknowledging that they're sovereign in the Cook Islands, but he thinks that agreement says, talk to us about what you're up to. He's not trying to stop them. He's just saying, talk about what you're up to. Isn't it?
Yeah, except they're getting a bit more antsy than that. They then go on, under Clause 5, the government of the Cook Islands possesses the capacity to enter into treaties and other international agreements in its own right with governments and regional international organisations. I mean, all I'm reading is an awful lot of, well, you tell us what you're going to do. Well, and I guess the real issue here is China, isn't it? If it was the United States of America, we wouldn't be worrying about this. It's China, yeah?
Yeah, but it's in the background too of the Kiribati experience we've just had.
Yes, and the Kiribati have said to piss off as well to New Zealand and Australia as well. I think we're reaping, aren't we reaping, don't you think, the glorious indifference that we've shown, and Australia for that matter, to the South Pacific in general?
Yes, but what has happened in the past is that we have thought we were best friends in the playground of the Pacific Islands, us in Australia and the US, and now as a new boy comes to school,
that's right.
New boy comes to school and says, hey, I'd quite like to be your friend, and there's all sorts of advantages in being.
And he's got a flash car.
And people thought, new friend, yeah, that look, and they're bringing stuff to the party, and we'd like to be their friend, and we're saying, hey, but we've been an old friend for years, and effectively, some of the Pacific Islands are saying, yeah, but you've been taking us for granted, and you're just last year's friend, really. We've got this shiny new friend.
Somebody said, Michael, the fuss, as far as I can see, is the money and aid they're getting. New Zealand super, New Zealand passports, and God knows what else. I couldn't give a rat's reserve they cuddle up to China. But if they won't play the game, I say we cut them off completely. And that goes for the Kiribati as well. Tell them all to jump in the lake, I say. Do you think that they'll take a leaf out of the New Zealand government, out of President Trump's book when it comes to US aid, and say the same thing about aid going into the South Pacific? Or does that just mean, well, invite the Chinese in and bring their warships with them?
No, I don't think they will, but there's a veiled hint that, and especially since what New Zealand and Australia, I think, are saying, in Kiribati is that, and this is not an area I've got any great competencies in at all, just incidentally.
Well, I don't think their foreign affairs have either, just quietly, so it probably allows you to have exactly the same competency as them. Carry on.
But I think that they're saying to Kiribati, we've given you aid for purposes. It's not so much got strings attached, or we hadn't thought about it that way, but you'd said, give us money to do X, Y, and Z. And so we've given you money to do X, Y, and Z. And we're saying, have you been doing X, Y, and Z? And they're saying, mind your own business. And we're saying, but that's what the money was for. Aid for particular purposes and things, because you said you needed it. And now you won't tell us what you're doing with it. You're just treating it as if it was, I woke up one morning and somebody deposited money in my bank account.
If everything was, the obvious geopolitical impression that's gained from this is that if everything was wonderful in the South Pacific backyard, China wouldn't be able to make these kind of entreaties, and that the Prime Minister of the Cook Islands wouldn't be flying off to Beijing to sign an agreement that the New Zealand government don't know about. Does that say something, though, about our relationship with our Pacific Island neighbours?
No, I think the world's just a different place, and there's more opportunities, and there's new boys in the playground. I think there's always going to be new boys turning up at school, and for years there wasn't. We just same old, rural school. Everybody was there before, and now, if you think of the rural school analogy, so here's a new something coming to the rural environment, and there's a whole lot of new families, and those people have a whole lot of new kids, and they turn up at the local school, and things are different. It doesn't mean that the old school didn't have its old school ways and whatever. I just think the world has become a much more
complex,
nuanced and unexpected, uncertain place. Yeah. And then you throw Trump in the mix, and God knows what you've got in front of you.
Well, it's interesting on that last one, because the Biden administration recognised, perhaps as a result of Kiribati, that they had neglected the South Pacific for a long, long time. And at one stage, I think, just to really punish them, they sent the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris, down to try and pacify the locals. I take Trump as a bit of an isolationist. I can't see that he'd see any particular moment in doing that. Is this likely to further encourage China into the South Pacific, do you think?
I think the uncertainty surrounding Trump from day to day, from thought to thought, opens possibilities for China that they wouldn't usually have available to them. I've been watching a 4-part, the beginning of a series about Trump, I think, from when he first did his first big building, started taking over doing things from his dad. And if you have a look at interviews for those years up until before he was standing about, it takes it up to the beginning of Obama's second presidency so far. But there's people saying things like, I've known him for years and things. There is no, as far as I can discern, there is no ethics, no morals, no scruples, no anything with Trump. He's just produces what he wants for the purpose of today. And so that's a theme running through the whole lot. There's also a theme of he really doesn't like to lose. And that's something we could use when we're thinking about him. He said since before 2012, when people have said, why don't you stand for president, you'd be fabulous. And he said, oh, yeah, maybe I will and things, but I would never stand for president unless I thought I would win. And he did stand when he thought he could. He doesn't like to lose.
That's fair enough.
And he doesn't.
Who goes into politics to lose?
Yeah. And he doesn't like to, some people go for a longer game, perhaps, or they
at the end of the day, you've got to win. You know, you don't stand to politics to lose elections.
No, I'm just saying that he really doesn't like to lose. Really doesn't like to lose, whereas some politicians will lose a couple of times before they win or whatever. And he doesn't like anything negative. So there's interviews with him where they've started the interview and then somebody said, what about the wee whoopsie from last week or something? And he's just taken the microphone off, said that this interview's over, go and talk to somebody else if you want negative crap like that.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to be talking
Absolutely.
to Jacinda Ardern. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to see the difference here. If she didn't like a story, she
Yes.
would say, I'm going to ignore you as well, particularly if it's something to do with your life.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Except there's a wee difference because the kindness, Trump wasn't saying he was kind.
Oh, actually, Trump wasn't saying he was kind and empathetic.
He's
No,
fabulous.
he's never said
He
that,
says
has
he's
he?
fabulous. He says everything he touches turns to wonderful things. Sometimes it's luck, sometimes it isn't. But if he's doing it, it's just great. It's the biggest building he's ever done, anyone in the world has ever done. It's the most people anyone's ever got to a rally. It's the most money anybody's ever raised for anything. It's absolutely superlative in all parts.
Can I just go back to the Pacific, please, and get back to the Cook Islands?